The wind screamed through the Teton Range like a wounded animal carrying snow that cut like broken glass. 28 degrees below zero. The kind of cold that turned breath to ice crystals before they hit the ground. The kind that killed the unprepared in less than an hour. Nora Thorne stood perfectly still in the center of the clearing, her white hair whipping around her face like a ghost's veil. And she was not afraid. She should have been. 8 wolves circled her in the pre-dawn darkness, their eyes reflecting what little light filtered through the heavy clouds. Not shifter wolves, wild ones. Massive timber wolves with coats thick as bear fur and teeth that could crush bone with a single bite. The kind that avoided humans, that ran from the scent of shifter magic, that had no reason to be this close to pack territory. The largest, a gray male with a scarred muzzle and eyes the color of old gold, stopped 10 feet away. His hackles rose. His lips pulled back to reveal fangs longer than Nora's fingers. Any sane person would have run. But Nora Thorne had learned a long time ago that she was not like other people. She tilted her head, studying the gray wolf. Then she did something that should have been impossible. She spoke without opening her mouth, not words exactly. It was feeling, an image, and understanding all at once, a language that existed before language, that flowed through the connection she had carried since birth. Peace. No threat. I see you, why have you come? The gray wolf's snarl faltered. His ears flicked forward. Behind him, the other 7 wolves stopped their circling. One by one they sat. Then impossibly they lowered their massive heads to the frozen ground. Submission, respect, recognition. The gray wolf rose and padded forward until he stood directly in front of her. He pressed his cold nose against her palm, and Nora felt the rush of communication. Images flooded her mind, and a pack decimated by disease, hunger driving them closer to dangerous territory. And beneath it all, a plea. Help. The 2-legged ones who change, they hunt us. They use the silver that burns. You who speak the old tongue, help us. Nora's throat tightened. Stay away from the eastern border, she whispered aloud. There are iron traps there. The council has been setting them for weeks. Head north instead into the high country. The elk herds are plentiful. You will be safe. The gray wolf held her gaze, gratitude radiating from him. Then he turned a sharp bark, summoning his pack, and within seconds, they were gone. Nora stood alone and allowed herself exactly 3 seconds of satisfaction before reality crashed back. The sky was lightening. The pack would be waking soon, and she was standing in the forest miles from her cabin with no explanation anyone would believe. The walk back took 40 minutes. By the time she reached the edge of Silverwood Pack territory, the sun painted the mountains in shades of gold and rose. She kept her head down, following the narrow path to the Omega quarters on the outskirts. Her cabin was the smallest, the one farthest from the main pack house, with walls so thin she could hear neighboring conversations. But it was hers, the only space in the entire territory that belonged to her. Out wandering again, Nora, Maeve Winters stood on the porch next door, arms crossed, her face lined with worry that had become permanent over 23 years. She was 50 now, her hair more gray than brown, but she stood straight. Once she had held rank. Once she had been someone. She was the closest thing to a mother Nora had ever known. Could not sleep, Nora said. Maeve's expression held worry and something else, something that looked like grief. You need to be more careful. The council members arrived today. All 6 of them. If anyone sees you out in the forest alone, I know. Nora had heard this warning 1,000 times. Be careful, stay hidden. She slipped inside her cabin before Maeve could press further. The familiar scent of dried herbs and wood smoke wrapped around her. Bundles of plants hung from the ceiling. Shelves lined the walls, crammed with jars and pouches and containers holding every remedy she had learned to make. This was her real gift, the one the pack could not quite decide whether to condemn or exploit. Her knowledge of plants, of healing, of wilderness medicine. She could set broken bones and stitch wounds, could identify 200 species by scent alone, could brew antidotes for poisons most shifters had never heard of. She had taught herself, spending countless hours in the forest learning from an old field guide she had found when she was 12. The pack tolerated her knowledge because occasionally it was useful. But they never let her forget it was a poor substitute for what she should have been. She moved through her small space, lighting the fire, filling the kettle. Her hands were red from the cold, but she had long since stopped caring about discomfort. Then she saw it, a small leather journal tucked between 2 larger books on the shelf above her bed. That had not been there yesterday. Her heart hammered as she pulled it down. The pages were yellowed with age, the handwriting delicate and faded. When she made out the words, the world tilted. To my daughter, if you are reading this, then I am dead. But you are alive, and that means there is still hope. Nora sank on her bed, unable to look away. Daughter, my daughter. She had been told she was found as an infant with no identification, no pack markings, nothing. But someone had known. Her hands shook as she turned the page. Your father and I are the last of the Whisperer line, the last who carry the blood of the first wolves. The primordials who walked this land before the great sundering split our kind into shifter and wild. The gift runs in your veins, child. The ability to speak to all wolves to bridge the divide that others cannot cross. It is not a curse no matter what they will tell you. It is the greatest blessing the old gods could give. But it is also the most dangerous. The Council of Six knows about our bloodline. They have been hunting Whisperers for 3 generations, killing anyone who carries the gift, destroying any record that we ever existed. They fear what we represent, fear the power we could wield if we chose to use it. If you are reading this, we have failed. We are gone. But you remain. Trust no one. The Council will come for you if they discover what you are. They will kill you, or worse, they will use you. Do not let them see. Stay hidden. Stay safe. But if the time comes when hiding is no longer possible, remember this. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are the heir to a power older than pack law. You are a Whisperer, and the wolves, the true wolves, will always recognize their own. Whisperer, primordial, first wolves. She had parents, real parents who had loved her, who had tried to protect her, who had died for her. And she had a gift that was not a mistake, but something intentional. Something ancient. Something the Council of Six wanted to destroy. A sharp knock made her jump. She shoved the journal under her pillow as the door swung open without waiting. Marcus Reed stood in the doorway, 25 years old, a warrior of middling rank with the kind of arrogance that came from never being challenged. Pack meeting in 1 hour. All Omegas required. The Council is arriving this afternoon. Nora kept her face neutral, her posture submissive. I will be there. Marcus did not leave. Instead, he stepped inside, his nose wrinkling. What were you doing out there this morning? I saw you coming back from the North Trail. Ice flooded Nora's veins, gathering herbs. The yarrow near the stream is good this time of year. In the dark, in winter, when it is cold enough to kill. His eyes narrowed. You are lying. I could not sleep. I do my best thinking while I walk. You do not have thoughts worth having. The insult was casual, automatic. Just make sure whatever strange habits you have, stay far away from the Council. We do not need them asking questions about the pack freak. He left the door swinging shut with force. Nora sat perfectly still, hands clenched, and counted to 100. Pack, freak, the words did not hurt anymore. She had heard them too many times. Broken, defective, cursed. Beast Whisperer, never a compliment. But beneath the walls she had built, the anger burned. 23 years of being less than, of being invisible, of being treated like a mistake. She pulled out the journal and read it again. Your father and I are the last of the Whisperer line. The Council has been hunting us. They will come for you. What were the odds that the Council would arrive the same day she discovered this journal? Nora did not believe in coincidence. She changed into her cleanest dress, a gray thing that hung loose and made her disappear into backgrounds. She braided her white hair, covering it with a scarf because the color drew too much attention. She scrubbed her hands until they looked less like she had been handling plants. By the time she left an hour later, she looked like exactly what the pack expected. No one. Nothing. A shadow that could be safely ignored. The pack meeting was held in the main square. Nora had been to dozens of these, always standing at the back, always silent, always waiting for it to be over. Today felt different. The air hummed with tension. Pack members clustered in groups, voices low and urgent. Warriors stood in formation near the pack house steps, expressions serious. Even the children seemed subdued. Alpha Garrett stood on the steps, a man in his late 50s with gray streaking his dark hair. He was not a bad alpha, not cruel. But he was weak. Everyone knew it. He held power because the Council allowed him to hold power. He raised his hand and the crowd fell silent. The Council of Six arrives within the hour. They come to discuss border disputes, trade agreements, pack law enforcement. But more than that, they come to observe, to judge. All pack members will show proper respect. All warriors will be at attention. All Omegas will serve as needed. We will present Silverwood as a strong, loyal, well-organized pack. Is that understood? A chorus of affirmatives rippled through the crowd. There is one more matter. Garrett's tone made Nora's skin prickle. The Alpha King will be accompanying the Council. The crowd exploded into whispers. Nora's head snapped up. The Alpha King. Cale Ravenscar, the ruler of the Northern Territories, the wolf who controlled Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and North Dakota. He never traveled with the council, never attended minor pack meetings. So why was he coming here? King Ravenscar's presence is an honor. He will be staying at the pack house as our guest. I expect perfect behavior from everyone. No incidents, no disruptions. Am I clear? Another chorus louder this time tinged with fear. Because the Alpha King did not come to territories that were stable. He came to territories that were failing. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Nora tried to slip away, but a hand caught her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Not so fast, White Wolf. Vivian Ashwood stared at her with eyes the color of honey and twice as toxic. 28, beautiful in the way weapons are beautiful, all sharp edges and deadly curves. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves. Her dress was deep emerald. She was also the niece of Counselor Aldrich Thornfield, which made her functionally untouchable. My uncle requires refreshments prepared for the council's arrival. Wine, cheese, fresh bread. You will assist in the kitchens. It was not a request. Vivian's grip tightened, nails digging in. And you will stay out of sight once the work is done. No one wants to see you skulking around while important matters are being discussed. Understand? Yes. Vivian released her with a slight push, already dismissing her as irrelevant. Nora turned toward the pack house, but as she walked, her hand brushed the pocket of her dress where she had tucked a small sprig of yarrow, the plant that promoted healing, that stopped bleeding. She had told Marcus she gathered herbs. He had not believed her, but she had not been lying. The kitchens were chaos. A dozen Omegas worked in coordination, chopping vegetables, kneading bread, stirring pots. The head cook, Margaret, barked orders with military precision. Nora was handed a knife and cutting board and pointed toward a mountain of root vegetables. She worked in silence, her mind drifting to the journal, to the words that had rewritten everything. Whisperer, the council has been hunting us for 3 generations. What were the odds this was coincidence? She was halfway through the vegetables when she heard it, the sound of vehicles approaching. The council had arrived, and with them, the Alpha King. Margaret clapped her hands. Presentable, all of you, wine to the Great Hall immediately. No spills, no mistakes, no embarrassments. Move. Nora found herself carrying a tray of crystal glasses filled with deep red wine, following the other Omegas through corridors she had never been allowed to enter. Her hands were steady despite the weight, her posture perfect, her expression neutral. Invisible, forgettable, safe. The Great Hall was magnificent. Rich wood paneling, massive stone fireplace furniture that cost more than Nora would earn in 10 years. Alpha Garrett stood at the center with his Beta and Gamma, all in formal dress postures, rigid. The pack's elite warriors lined the walls, 20 in perfect formation. The doors opened and the Council of 6 entered. Nora had seen them from a distance before, but never this close, never felt the weight of their combined presence. Counselor Aldrich Thornfield led them, a man in his late 50s who carried authority in every line of his body. Silver hair, sharp eyes, expensive suit, perfectly tailored. He looked like someone's distinguished grandfather. Nora knew better. Monsters were rarely ugly. Behind him came the others. Lady Rowena Blackwood, the mining magnate with eyes like ice. Lord Garrick Stone, controlling trade routes. Warden Magnus Cole, the enforcer with scars on his knuckles. Dr. Matthias Graves, whose official title was researcher. And Vivian's mother, who looked like an older, harder version of her daughter. They spread across the hall like a conquering army. Garrett bowed deeply. Counselors, Silverwood Pack welcomes you. We are honored by your presence. Aldrich's smile was warm, paternal, completely false. The honor is ours, Alpha Garrett. Your territory continues to serve the greater good admirably. Translation. We own you. The doors opened again and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. He entered alone. No guards, no entourage, no ceremony. Cale Ravenscar, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, was 32 years old and looked like violence personified. 6'3" of lean muscle and predatory grace, with black hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes the color of molten silver. He wore simple clothes, dark pants and shirt, but he moved with the kind of confidence that made everything around him seem ornamental. This was a man who had killed his first challenger at 19, who had consolidated 4 territories by 25, who was feared and respected and obeyed without question. And he was staring directly at Nora. She froze the tray suddenly, impossibly heavy, her heart hammering. Those silver eyes locked onto hers, saw, recognized, marked. Then he stumbled, slight, barely noticeable. But this was the Alpha King who moved with perfect control, who never showed weakness, who never made mistakes. He caught himself on the table edge, knuckles going white, breathing suddenly labored. Garrett rushed forward, but KL waved him off. Apologies. The journey was longer than expected. I require a moment. Aldrich's expression shifted. Of course, Your Majesty. Perhaps some refreshment. The Silverwood kitchens have prepared excellent wine. Kale's eyes found Nora again, and this time she saw something in them. Pain. Real visceral pain, and beneath it, confusion. He straightened slowly. Wine would be appreciated. Margaret appeared at Nora's elbow, snatching the tray. Move, girl. The king does not wait. But before Nora could step back, Kale spoke again. No, her. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Nora. Your Majesty, Garrett's voice was hesitant. The white-haired Omega, Kale said, his voice steady now, commanding. She will bring the wine. It was not a request. It was an order. Nora's hands shook as she took the tray back as she crossed the space between herself and the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. She kept her eyes down, every instinct screaming at her to run. She reached Kyle and held out the tray, praying he would just take a glass and let her disappear. Instead, his hand closed around her wrist. The world exploded. Not pain exactly. Connection sudden and overwhelming and impossible. Every nerve ending firing at once, every sense amplified beyond bearing. Recognition on a level so deep that thought became irrelevant. And through it all, a single word that resonated in her bones. Mate. Nora's eyes snapped up to meet Kael's, and she saw her own shock reflected back. The mate bond. The connection that could not be faked, could not be forced, that the moon goddess forged between souls meant to be together. Except it required two wolves, and Nora did not have one. This could not be happening. But Kael's hand was still on her wrist, his silver eyes wide with horror and wonder and fear all tangled together. His lips moved, forming a single word only she could hear. Impossible. The tray fell from her other hand, crystal shattering on the floor, red wine spreading like blood across expensive carpet. The sound broke the spell. Kael released her wrist, stepping back, his expression shuddering. But his hands were trembling. She saw them trembling. Apologies, I believe the journey has affected me more than I realized. I require rest. We will reconvene in the morning. He turned and walked from the hall, his stride steady now, his composure perfect. But Nora had felt the bond singing between them, had felt it pull taut as he moved away, had felt the wrongness of distance. She stood in a pool of spilled wine and broken glass while the entire Council of Six and assembled pack leadership stared at her while whispers started to ripple through the room. The Alpha King was her mate. And the Council of Six, who had hunted her bloodline for 3 generations, who had killed her parents, who wanted nothing more than to see the Whisperer line destroyed, had just watched it happen. Nora knew with absolute certainty that she had just run out of places to hide. The silence lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. Then chaos erupted. Garrett shouted orders. Servants scrambled to clean spilled wine. Warriors moved to escort the council to their quarters. Through it all, Nora stood frozen in the center of destruction, her wrists still burning where the Alpha King had touched her. Mate. The word echoed in her skull like a death knell. You. Aldrich Thornfield's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He stood 3 feet away, distinguished features arranged in concern that did not reach his eyes. What is your name, child? Every instinct Nora possessed screamed at her to run, but running would only confirm suspicions. So she dropped into the deepest bow her shaking legs could manage. Nora Thorne, counselor, I apologize for my clumsiness. Thorne, he said the name, slowly tasting it. Are you from this pack originally? Found as an infant counselor, 23 years ago. No family name, so Alpha Garrett gave me one. The story she had told 100 times. How unusual, he murmured. And you have not shifted, I take it. No, counselor, I am wolfless. Fascinating. Aldrich stepped closer. Nora caught his scent. Old leather and expensive cologne, and underneath something chemical. Wrong. The Alpha King seemed quite affected by your presence. Have you met him before? Never, counselor. Then his reaction was most peculiar. Aldrich's hand moved as if to touch her. Perhaps the journey truly did tax him. Or perhaps, Uncle. Vivian appeared at Aldrich's elbow, expression smooth but eyes sharp. Alpha Garrett has prepared the West Wing for the council. Shall I show you to your quarters? Aldrich's hand dropped. He studied Nora for another long moment, and she knew he suspected something. That her name had triggered recognition, or her appearance, or simply the way KL had reacted. Of course, we will discuss this matter further. You are dismissed, child. Nora fled. She moved through corridors as fast as she dared without running past servants who stared and whispered, past warriors who looked at her with new speculation. The white-haired Omega who had made the Alpha King stumble. She burst out into air so cold it seared her lungs, and she did not stop until she reached her cabin. Only then did she collapse against the door, hard-hammering hands shaking. Mate. The bond still hummed in her veins, pulling toward the pack house where Cale Ravenscar was recovering. She could feel him like a compass pointing north, could sense his presence in a way that should not be possible. Because mate bonds required two wolves, everyone knew that. And yet, she grabbed the journal from under her pillow, flipping through pages frantically. There had to be something here. She found it three-quarters through in an entry written in her mother's increasingly frantic hand. The council believes whisperers are dangerous because we can communicate with wild wolves. But that is not the real reason they hunt us. Whisperers do not need shifter wolves to form bonds. We carry the original wolf, the primordial spirit that existed before the Great Sundering. Our souls are already merged with wolf essence, just not in the way modern shifters understand. We cannot shift our bodies, but our spirits have never been separate from wolf nature. This means we can form mate bonds with anyone the moon goddess chooses. We can bridge bloodlines, unite packs, create connections that bypass the political structures the council has spent centuries building. A whisperer mated to an alpha king could shift the balance of power across all territories. This is why they kill us, not because we are dangerous to individuals, but because we are dangerous to their systems of control. If you have found your mate daughter, know this, the bond is real, it is as valid, and it makes you the single greatest threat the council has ever faced. The journal slipped from Nora's fingers. The council knew what she was, or they would know soon enough. Aldrich's questions had been too pointed, and Kyle, her mate, the one person who might be powerful enough to protect her, and she had no idea if he would want to try. She had seen the horror in his silver eyes when the bond snapped into place. A sharp knock made her jump. She shoved the journal back under her pillow. Maeve stood on the threshold, face ashen. Tell me it is not true. Tell me the rumors are exaggerated. What rumors? The entire pack is saying that the Alpha King recognized you, that he could not take his eyes off you, that something happened between you in the Great Hall. Maeve pushed inside and closed the door, voice dropping to urgent whisper. Nora, please, please tell me you stayed invisible. I did not do anything, Nora said, and it was the truth. He asked for me specifically to bring him wine. I obeyed. The tray was too heavy. I dropped it. That is all. That is not all. Maeve gripped her shoulder, fingers digging in. I have been watching Counselor Thornfield. He is asking questions about you, about where you came from, about your parents. He knows something, Nora, or he suspects. I know. The words came out flat. What do I do? You run. Maeve released her and moved to the shelves, pulling down a worn pack. Pack what you can carry. Move fast. Head north into the high country. I have a friend in the Stormwind pack who owes me a favor. She will hide you until this blows over. It will not blow over. Nora watched Maeve frantically stuff supplies. If the council suspects what I am, they will hunt me. You know they will. Then you go farther. Canada, Alaska, somewhere they cannot reach. Nora took the pack, felt its weight, and knew with absolute certainty that running was pointless. The council controlled 7 territories. They had resources, connections, power that stretched across the entire northern half of the continent. Unless she had protection, unless she had power of her own, unless she accepted the impossible bond. I need to talk to him, Nora heard herself say. To the Alpha King. Are you insane? He is in the council's pocket. Everyone knows it. If you go to him, if you admit what you are, he will hand you over to save his own position. Maybe, or maybe he felt the same thing I did. Maybe he knows the bond is real. And maybe that is exactly what the council fears most. She did not wait for Maeve to argue. She stepped out into gathering darkness. The pack house blazed with light half a mile away, and she could feel Kyle inside it like a lodestone pulling at her bones. The walk felt like approaching an execution. Pack members stared as she passed, their whispers following her like smoke. The pack house was heavily guarded now. Nora approached the main doors and was immediately intercepted by 2 wolves she did not recognize. Not Silverwood warriors. These were Kyle's personal guard wearing black and silver. State your business, the larger one demanded. I need to speak with the Alpha King. The king is not receiving visitors. He will see me. Nora met the guard's eyes. Tell him the white-haired Omega requests an audience. Tell him it concerns what happened in the Great Hall. The guards exchanged glances. The smaller one disappeared inside. Nora stood perfectly still, hands clasped, breathing controlled. Inside, her heart was trying to beat its way out. 5 minutes passed. 10. The cold seeped through her worn coat. Then the door opened. The king will grant you 5 minutes. Follow me. They led her through corridors she had never been allowed to enter, past rooms filled with luxury that existed only for the privileged few. Other guards watched her pass with curiosity and contempt. A wolfless Omega being escorted to the Alpha King's private chambers. The guard stopped before a heavy wooden door and knocked twice. A voice from within, deep and commanding, said simply, "Enter." Nora stepped inside and the door closed behind her with finality. The room was large, dominated by a massive bed and a fireplace where flames crackled. But Nora barely registered any of it. Her entire focus narrowed to the man standing by the window, his back to her, posture rigid. Chaol Ravenscar had removed his jacket. His dark shirt stretched across his shoulders, and even from behind, she could see tension vibrating through his frame. He did not turn when she entered. The silence stretched. "You should not have come here." Chaol's voice was rough. "Whatever you think happened between us, it was a mistake." "It was not a mistake. You felt it too. The bond. I know you did. When there is no bond." He turned finally. Silver eyes blazed in a face carved from stone and shadows beautiful and terrifying. "You are a wolfless Omega. I am an Alpha King. The moon goddess does not make those kinds of matches." And yet she did. Nora stood her ground even as every instinct screamed at her to submit. "I felt it. The connection. The recognition. And so did you." "What you felt was—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "It does not matter. I have obligations. Political alliances. A mate arrangement already in place with Lady Vivian Ashwood. Even if there was a bond, which there is not, it could not be acknowledged. Vivian, the niece of Councillor Thornfield." "How convenient." Chaol's expression darkened. "Careful, Omega. You forget to whom you are speaking." "Do I—" Something reckless was building in Nora's chest. "You are the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 4 territories. And you are afraid of the Council of 6, afraid enough to deny a mate bond. You know nothing about my situation. I know you are a prisoner. I know they control you through threats and pressure and political manipulation." Chaol moved so fast she barely saw it. One moment by the window, the next he had her pinned against the wall, one hand beside her head, his body caging hers. This close, she could see the silver of his eyes was fractured, shot through with veins of black. Could smell pine forests and winter storms. "You know nothing," he growled, and she felt the vibration in her bones. "The council has been in power for 3 generations. They control trade routes, mining operations, pack laws. They have the loyalty of half the alphas in the territories. If I move against them without absolute proof, without perfect timing, they will tear apart everything I have built. Thousands will die in the chaos. And how many have already died because you did nothing? How many Omegas have disappeared? How many wolves have been trafficked or enslaved or murdered while you played politics?" His hand fisted in the wall beside her head. For a moment she thought he might strike her. Then something in his expression cracked, and she saw past the anger to exhaustion beneath, to bone-deep weariness of a man who had been fighting a war alone for too long. "You think I do not know?" His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You think I have not counted every casualty, every failure, every compromise I have made in the name of stability? I know what they are. I know what they do. And I have been gathering evidence, building alliances, preparing for the day when I can finally move against them." "How long? How long have you been preparing?" 10 years. The number hit like a physical blow. 10 years of careful planning, of watching the council hurt people while he built his case. 10 years of being alone. "And then you walk into a room," Chaol continued, voice rough with something that might have been anger or anguish, "and the bond snaps into place, and suddenly everything I have been working toward is at risk. Because if the council discovers what you are, if they realize I have a mate who can destabilize their entire power structure, they will not wait. They will strike first. They will kill you and anyone who tries to protect you." "What I am," Nora latched onto the words. "You know what I am. You know about whisperers." Chaol's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, they held knowledge. "I know the old stories. I know the council has been hunting certain bloodlines for generations. And I know that a wolfless Omega who can form a mate bond is not just wolfless. She is something far more dangerous. My parents were whisperers, the last of the bloodline. The council killed them when I was an infant. And today they succeeded in finding you." Chaol's hand moved from the wall to her face, fingers ghosting along her jaw with gentleness that contradicted his earlier violence. "Because I could not control my reaction. I marked you as important, and now Aldrich Thornfield is asking questions. He was asking questions before you arrived. I think they have been watching this pack, which means you were never safe here. Kale's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Nora felt the bond flare between them, warm and bright and utterly undeniable. Which means running is pointless. Unless I stay with you, unless we acknowledge the end and I claim protection as your mate. That would be a declaration of war. Maybe war is coming anyway. Kale stared at her for a long moment, silver eyes searching her face. Then he stepped back, putting distance between them, and the loss of contact felt like a physical wound. I need time to think. I need to consider all the variables, all the possible consequences. He moved to a desk in the corner and pulled out paper, writing quickly. Take this to my head guard. It is a protection order. No one can touch you without going through my personal warriors. It will buy us a day, maybe two. And then I decide whether acknowledging this bond is worth the cost. He held out the paper, expression carefully neutral. Or whether protecting you requires keeping you at a distance with Dio. Nora took the paper, fingers brushing his, and felt the bond sing between them. Connection, recognition, rightness, everything she had never had, and he was considering rejecting it. I understand, she said, though she did not. I will wait for your decision. She turned toward the door, but his voice stopped her. Nora, she looked back. Kale stood framed by firelight, expression tortured, and for the first time, he looked less like a king and more like a man caught between impossible choices. I am sorry, for whatever that is worth. Nora left without responding. Sorry did not change their situation. Sorry did not make her safe. Sorry did not fill the hollow ache in her chest where the bond pulled towards someone who was not sure he wanted it. The guards escorted her out in silence. The protection order clutched in her hand felt simultaneously like a lifeline and a prison sentence. Protected but not claimed. She was halfway back to her cabin when she sensed them. 3 wolves moving through shadows at the settlement's edge. Not shifters, wild wolves. And at the center, massive and black as midnight was shadow. The primordial. Nora changed direction without conscious thought, following the pull into the forest beyond pack boundaries. The temperature dropped as she moved away from the settlement's warmth, but she barely felt the cold. Shadow waited in a small clearing flanked by 2 others. He regarded her with eyes that held millennia of wisdom, and when he spoke directly into her mind, his voice was like stone grinding against stone. Little sister, you have been marked by the Broken King. Broken, Nora moved closer. What do you mean? The king carries death in his veins, a curse placed there by the ones who fear our kind. In 6 weeks, when the full moon rises, he will become like the twisted ones, feral, lost to madness, unless the curse is purged. Horror flooded through her. The council did this to him. 10 winters passed, they poisoned him with a slow-acting toxin designed to corrupt his wolf over time. They have been controlling him through this threat, knowing that eventually he would have no choice but to submit completely. Or die. Can it be cured? Only by one who carries the old blood. Only by a whisperer bonded to him completely. Your connection is the cure they fear most. This is why they hunt your bloodline. The pieces were falling into place. The council had been systematically eliminating whispers, not just to maintain control, but to ensure that no one could save the wolves they cursed. And Kyle knew. Of course he knew. He had been living with this death sentence for 10 years, watching the curse slowly consume him. He has 6 weeks, Nora said aloud, until the full moon, until he turns feral. Unless you choose to save him, unless the bond is completed. Shadow's golden eyes bored into hers. But know this, if you save the Broken King, if you purge the curse and reveal yourself fully, the council will come for you with everything they have. They will kill you or die trying. They are going to kill me anyway. At least this way I die for something that matters. You would give your life for a king who cannot decide if you are worth the risk. The question cut deep. Nora thought about Kale's tortured expression, about his apology, about the careful distance he was maintaining. She thought about 10 years of bearing an impossible burden alone. He is trying to save thousands. I am trying to save one. Maybe that makes us both fools. Or maybe it makes you exactly what this broken world needs. Shadow dipped his massive head. The primordials will protect you, little sister. When the time comes when the council moves against you, you will not face them alone. Why do you care what happens to me? Because you are the last bridge between what we were and what your kind has become. If the Whisperer line dies, the great sundering becomes permanent. Wild and Shifter will never reunite. The balance will be lost forever. And because you healed me when you had no obligation to do so. The gray wolf from that morning stepped forward. His name is Storm Shadow Communicated. He will watch over you when I cannot. If the council moves before the king makes his choice, run to the high valley 3 miles north. We will shelter you there. And if the king chooses to reject the bond, then you survive anyway. You are Whisperer. You are the last of your line. Your life matters beyond any single bond. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a preview of the loneliness that waited if Kael walked away. Shadow moved closer and Nora felt the brush of his massive head against her shoulder. You deserve more than survival. Little sister, you deserve to be chosen, not just protected. The Broken King would do well to remember it too. Then the primordials were gone, melting into shadows and snowfall. Nora stood alone and shivered despite the pendant's warmth. She could choose to save Kael, choose to complete the bond, and purge the curse. But he had to choose her first. The walk back felt longer. Exhaustion pulled at her bones. Her legs shook as she climbed the steps to her porch. She made it exactly 3 steps inside before her knees gave out. Strong arms caught her. For a wild moment, she thought it was Kael. Then she caught the scent. Maeve lowered her to the narrow bed, face creased with worry. You are freezing. What were you thinking about, Betty? I needed to clear my head. And did it work? Maeve wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, moved to stoke the fire. Because the entire pack is talking. They are saying the Alpha King summoned you to his chambers. They are saying you were alone with him for almost 30 minutes. I know what they are saying. Let them talk. It changes everything. Maeve sank onto the bed's edge, looking older than Nora had ever seen her. The council is watching you now. Aldrich Thornfield spent the entire dinner asking questions about your background. Then I am already in danger. The king's protection. Maeve's laugh was bitter. The same king who is engaged to Councillor Thornfield's niece, Vui, he is not in their pocket. He is cursed. The words came out sharper than intended. They poisoned him 10 years ago with something that will turn him feral in 6 weeks unless the curse is broken. They have been controlling him through this threat. Maeve went very still. How do you know this? The primordials told me. Nora met Maeve's eyes. Shadow, the black wolf I healed this morning. He is one of the first wolves, the ancient ones from before the great sundering. And he says I can save the king, that my Whisperer blood can purge the curse. No, absolutely not. That is exactly what the council wants. They want you to reveal yourself to use your power publicly. They are going to eliminate me anyway. Nora stood, the blanket falling away. You said it yourself. Aldrich is already suspicious. At least this way I die doing something that matters. You die either way. Maeve's voice broke. There is no version of this where you survive. Even if you save the king, even if he acknowledges the bond, they will find a way to kill you. They always do. My parents thought the same thing. Nora reached under her pillow and pulled out the journal. They spent their entire lives running, and they still died. Maybe running is not the answer. Maybe the only way to win is to stop running and fight back. With what army you are one Omega, one Whisperer. Maybe not alone, but the primordials said something important. They said if the Whisperer line dies, the Great Sundering becomes permanent. That implies it can be reversed. That wild wolves and shifters can reunite. Imagine what kind of power that would be. That is legend, mythology. Because there have been no Whisperers to Traum. Nora felt something kindling in her chest. What if that is why the council has been hunting my bloodline so aggressively? Not just because we can communicate with wild wolves, but because we represent the possibility of something much bigger. Maeve sank back, the fight draining out. Even if that is true, you would need time. Time to learn, to train, to build alliances. And you have 6 weeks. Then I better start now. The determination in Nora's voice surprised even herself. She had spent 23 years being invisible. And where had it gotten her? Still hunted, still in danger, still alone. But maybe she did not have to be alone anymore. You are serious about this. You are actually going to try to save him. I am going to try, and I need your help. I need you to tell me everything you know about my parents, about the Whisperer bloodline. No more protecting me by keeping me ignorant. Maeve was silent for a long moment, eyes distant. Then she squeezed Nora's hands and began to speak. Your mother's name was Lyra. Your father was Theron. They were brilliant, powerful, and deeply in love. And they knew from the moment you were conceived that you would be the council's primary target. Because you were not just a Whisperer, you were the child of 2 Whisperer bloodlines, the first in 4 generations. your power would be exponential. It would have been, Nora's breath caught. Is exponential, Maeve corrected quietly. Your parents spent the last months of their lives preparing. This cabin, they built it. The journal, your mother started it the day she knew she was pregnant. The council found them anyway. 3 days after you were born, they tracked them to a safe house in northern Idaho. Your parents fought. They killed 4 council enforcers before they fell. And in those final moments, they got you out. Put you in the forest with the 2 primordial guardians who carried you to Silverwood territory, to me. You knew them. I was your mother's sister. The admission hung in the air like a thunderclap. Half-sister technically, I did not inherit the Whisperer gift. Just enough bloodline connection that your mother trusted me to raise you if the worst happened. Nora stared at the woman who had raised her, seeing her with completely new eyes. You are my aunt, my family. Why did you never tell me? Because the council was looking for Lyra's sister too. So I changed my name, took a new identity, played the part of a random Pac Omega who had taken in an abandoned infant out of pity. Maeve's eyes were wet now. I have spent 23 years pretending you meant nothing to me beyond obligation. Keeping you at arm's length, being cold, being careful. Because if they knew I loved you, they would have used it against us. Maeve. Nora pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling the older woman's shoulders shake. I understand. I do. I am sorry. I am so sorry I could not be the mother you deserved. But I kept you alive. You did more than that. You taught me how to survive. How to be invisible when I needed to be. How to use my skills without drawing attention. Everything I know about wilderness medicine, about plants, about endurance, I learned from watching you. And now you are going to use those skills to walk into a war. Maeve managed a watery smile. Your mother would be proud. Terrified but proud. Will you help me? I will help you. Maeve stood moving to a loose floorboard Nora had never noticed. She pried it up and pulled out a small wooden box. Your parents left this for you. I was supposed to give it to you when you turned 25, but I think the timeline has changed. Inside the box were 3 items. A silver pendant shaped like a wolf in mid-howl, a small vial of dark liquid, and another journal, this one in her father's handwriting. The pendant will amplify your Whisperer abilities. It is made from meteoric silver. Wearing it will strengthen your connection to the primordials. And the vial runs primordial blood, freely given by Shadow himself. Your father's notes say that drinking it will allow you to temporarily merge with a primordial's consciousness. To see through their eyes, access their memories, understand their power on a fundamental level. Maeve's expression was grave. But it is dangerous. The merge can overwhelm a human mind if you are not prepared. Nora picked up the vial, feeling possibility in her palm. This could be the key. And the journal. Training exercises. Techniques your father developed for accessing Whisperer abilities. If you are serious about developing your power in 6 weeks, this is your best chance. 6 weeks. 42 days. It seemed both impossibly short and agonizingly long. Nora stood, the box clutched in her hands, and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking over the mountains. Somewhere in the pack house, Chaol Ravenscar was weighing his options. Somewhere in the guest quarters, the Council of Six was planning their next move. And here in a tiny cabin on the edge of everything, Nora Thorne was making a choice that would change her life forever. She fastened the pendant around her neck and felt it warm against her skin, felt something inside her respond. Power, potential, purpose. I am done hiding, she said to the sunrise, to Maeve, to herself. Whatever Chaol decides, whether he accepts the bond or not, I am going to save him. I am going to stop the council. And I am going to make sure no one else has to grow up the way I did, invisible and afraid and convinced they are broken. Maeve joined her at the window, and together they watched the sun climb above the peaks, marking the beginning of the last normal day either of them would ever have. Because war was coming. The council knew it. The primordials knew it. And somewhere deep in her bones, in the place where the bond sang its impossible song, Nora knew that Chaol Ravenscar knew it too. The only question was whether he would fight alone, or whether he would finally accept that the moon goddess had given him exactly the weapon he needed to win. A wolfless Omega with white hair and violet eyes who could speak to ancient powers and refuse to be broken. A Whisperer, the last of her kind, and possibly the first of something new. The council's formal dinner began at precisely 7 o'clock, and Nora was required to serve. She had not slept. Had spent the remaining daylight hours reading her father's journal, absorbing techniques and theories about Whisperer abilities that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. The pendant hung warm against her collarbone, hidden beneath the high neckline of her serving dress, and she could feel it amplifying something inside her. A low hum of power that had always been there, but never quite accessible. Now walking through the packed house corridors with a tray of appetizers, she could feel the wolves around her in a way she never had before. Not just their physical presence, but the essence of their wolves. Some bright and strong, others dim and struggling. And beneath it all, threading through the building like a dark current, she felt him. Cahill. The bond pulled toward the dining hall pulled so hard it made her steps falter. She could sense his tension, his careful control, and underneath, barely perceptible, the creeping darkness of the curse. A corruption eating him alive. 6 weeks, the primordials had said. But feeling it now, Nora wondered if he even had that long. The dining hall was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across a table laden with enough food to feed twice its number. The Council of Six occupied the places of honor with Kyle at the head and Alpha Garrett relegated to a position near the foot. She entered through the service door, joining the line of Omegas. Her hands were steady, her expression carefully neutral. Just another servant. Just another invisible Omega. Until Aldrich Thornfield's eyes locked onto her. Ah, the white-haired one. His voice was warm, grandfatherly, and it made her skin crawl. Tell me, child, what is your name again? Nora Thorne, counselor. She set a plate before him with practiced precision, keeping her eyes downcast. Thorne. Such an interesting surname for a foundling. His fingers drummed on the table. Alpha Garrett, when exactly did you assign names to your orphans? I was under the impression most packs simply used numbers. Garrett cleared his throat. 23 years ago, counselor, when Nora was brought to us as an infant, it seemed more humane to give her a proper name. How progressive. And in those 23 years, she has never shown any signs of shifting. None, counselor. Fascinating. Aldrich turned his attention back to Nora, and she felt his scrutiny like insects crawling across her skin. Tell me, Nora Thorne, do you ever feel different from other Omegas especial, perhaps in ways that do not involve shifting? The question was a trap. If she said yes, she revealed herself. If she said no, he would press harder. I feel very ordinary, counselor, just an Omega trying to be useful to her pack. Useful. Vivian spoke from her position beside Kale, voice dripping with contempt. Is that what you call dropping wine on visiting dignitaries? An accident, my lady. One I deeply regret. I am sure you do, though accidents do seem to follow you. I heard you were out in the forest quite late last night, alone in dangerous territory. One might think you were meeting someone. The implication hung in the air. Nora felt every eye turned towards her, felt Kale's attention sharpen, though he had not looked at her once. I was gathering herbs, my lady, for the pack physician. In the dark, in winter. Vivian's smile was razor sharp. How dedicated. Some plants are more potent when harvested under moonlight. I apologize if my duties took me beyond appropriate boundaries. Your duties. Aldrich leaned forward slightly. What exactly are your duties, child? I assist the pack physician counselor, gathering herbs, preparing remedies, treating minor injuries. A healer. How useful indeed. And have you ever treated anything more serious? Say a wolf suffering from an unusual ailment. The temperature seemed to drop. Nora's mind raced, trying to understand what he was really asking. I have limited training, counselor. Serious ailments are beyond my skill. Aldrich sat back, exchanging glances with Dr. Graves. Pity, I have been curious about certain medical anomalies. Wolves who should shift but do not. Wolves who develop abilities they should not possess. It would be interesting to study such cases. Do you not think, Dr. Graves nodded, pale eyes fixed on Nora with clinical interest. Extremely interesting, counselor. Though such anomalies are rare. When they do occur, they tend to run in bloodlines, genetic predispositions that express in unusual ways. Bloodlines, Aldrich turned back to Nora. You said you were a foundling. No knowledge of your parents at all. None, counselor. And Alpha Garrett, you kept no records, no items found with the infant. Garrett shifted uncomfortably. There were 2 dead wolves found near her, counselor. We assumed they were her parents killed by rogues. The bodies were too damaged to identify. 2 wolves, not shifters in wolf form, actual wolves. We assumed shifters who had died in their wolf form, counselor. Of course. Aldrich's smile returned, but there was nothing warm about it. Though it does make one wonder. 2 wolves killed protecting an infant who would grow up unable to shift. What are the odds of such a specific tragedy? The trap was closing. Nora could feel it, could see the careful web Aldrich was weaving. He knew. Maybe not everything, but he suspected. And he was testing his theory. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways, counselor. I do not pretend to understand her plans. No, I suppose you do not. Aldrich picked up his wine glass, studying the deep red liquid. Though some might say a wolfless Omega who draws the attention of the Alpha King represents a rather clear plan. Wouldn't you agree, Your Majesty? Kale's silver eyes finally lifted, meeting Aldrich's gaze with cold precision. I hardly think my momentary distraction yesterday constitutes divine intervention, counselor. I was tired from travel. The Omega was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Of course, though I notice you have assigned her a protection detail. Rather generous for a simple Omega. I do not tolerate abuse of any pack member, regardless of rank. The protection order ensures she will not be scapegoated for an accident that was ultimately my fault. How noble! Vivian placed her hand over Kale's on the table, a claiming gesture that made Nora's stomach clench, though perhaps unnecessary. Are you questioning my judgment, Lady Ashwood? The words were quiet, but they carried enough menace to make Vivian withdraw her hand. Of course not, Your Majesty. The protection order stands. Kale's attention returned to his plate to missing her. Silence fell across the table. Nora used the opportunity to retreat, backing toward the service entrance, but Aldrich's voice stopped her one more time. Before you go, child, one more question. Have you ever heard the term whisperer? Nora's blood turned to ice. Every muscle locked, her breath stopping in her throat. This was it, the moment where everything either ended or began. No, counselor, I have not. Interesting. Aldrich watched her with the intensity of a scientist observing an experiment. It is an old term, very old, refers to certain wolves who supposedly could communicate with wild animals, particularly wild wolves. Of course, it is just legend, superstition. But I have always found legends fascinating. They often contain kernels of truth buried beneath the mythology. I know nothing of legends, counselor, only my work and my duties. Of course you do not. Aldrich waved a dismissive hand. You may go. Nora fled. There was no dignity in it. She moved through the service corridors with her heart hammering, her hands shaking, her mind screaming warnings. He knew. Aldrich Thornfield knew what she was, or at least suspected strongly enough to be testing her. She made it to the kitchen before her knees gave out, leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Nora, one of the other Omegas, touched her shoulder. Are you all right? I am fine, just tired. I need some air. She stumbled out the back entrance into the frigid night, welcoming the shock of cold against her overheated skin. The moon was rising 3/4 full. 30 days. In 30 days it would be full, and Kale would turn feral unless the curse was broken. That was quite a performance. Nora spun to find Kale emerging from the shadows near the building's edge. He had left the dinner, left the council sitting at his table to follow her outside. Your Majesty, she dropped into an automatic curtsy. I apologize if I caused any disruption. Stop. He closed the distance in 3 long strides. Stop apologizing. Stop playing submissive. Not with me. Then what do you want from me? The words came out sharper than intended. You will not acknowledge the bond. You will not claim me, but you also will not leave me alone. What am I supposed to do? I want you to survive. Kale's hands clenched at his sides. Aldrich is closing in. You see that, do not you? Every question he asked tonight was designed to trap you into revealing what you are. And you held your ground brilliantly, but it will not be enough. He will keep pushing until he has proof. Then what do you suggest that I run? We both know that is pointless. I suggest you stay exactly where you are under my protection and let me handle the council. I am close, Nora. So close to having everything I need to move against them. Evidence of corruption, financial crimes, violations of pack law that even their allies cannot ignore. Just a few more weeks. You do not have a few more weeks. The shout burst out before Nora could stop it. The curse is accelerating. I can feel it through the bond, Kale. It is eating you alive faster than you think. His expression shuddered. The primordials told you. Shadow told me, and before you ask, yes, I know you have been living with this death sentence for 10 years. I know the council poisoned you to control you, and I know that I can cure it. That completing the bond will purge the corruption. She stepped closer, forcing him to look at her. So why are you still hesitating? Because curing the curse means revealing what you are. The moment we complete the bond, the moment you use your whisperer abilities on that scale, Aldrich will know. The entire council will know. and they will come after you with everything they have. Let them come. You do not understand what you are saying. I understand perfectly. I understand that I have spent 23 years being afraid, being small, being invisible, and I am done. If they are going to kill me anyway, if running is pointless and hiding is over, then I would rather die fighting than cowering. You think this is about fighting? You think courage will be enough against an organization that has been eliminating threats for 3 generations? KL grabbed her shoulders, grip almost painful. They will not just kill you, Nora. They will make an example of you. Then we make sure they fail. She covered his hands with hers, felt the bond flare between them. You have been planning this for 10 years. You have evidence of allies' resources. And now you have me, a whisperer who can potentially unite wild and shifter wolves. Do you understand the kind of power we could wield together? Kael's eyes closed and she felt the war raging inside him. Duty versus desire. Careful planning versus desperate hope. If we do this, he said finally, if we acknowledge the bond and cure the curse, we have to be ready to move immediately. No hesitation, no second chances. We declare war on the council and we win or we lose everything. Then we win. Tell me what you need from me. I need you to trust me. His hands moved from her shoulders to cup her face, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. I need you to be ready, and I need you to understand that once we start this, there is no going back. I am not going back. Nora, no. She covered his hands with hers. I ran this morning. Or I tried to. Maeve packed me a bag and told me to disappear into the wilderness. And I realized something. Running means dying alone. Fighting means dying with purpose. I choose purpose. Something in Kaisel's expression cracked. The careful control, the kingly composure, the walls he had built to survive a decade of impossible choices. It all fractured, and underneath was a man who looked exhausted and terrified and desperately lonely. I do not deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, but the moon goddess does not seem to care what we deserve. Only what we need. And what do you need? The question was barely audible, but it carried the weight of everything unsaid between them. I need you to fight with me instead of for me. I need you to trust that I am strong enough to stand beside you. And I need you to stop trying to protect me from choices that are mine to make. Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he lowered his forehead to rest against hers. The gesture was intimate, vulnerable, completely at odds with the powerful king who had walked into Silverwood yesterday. Partners, he said, the wolfless Omega and the cursed king. The council is going to lose their minds. Good, let them. Kael pulled back just enough to look at her properly, his silver eyes searching her face. Then with infinite care, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, tentative, but it sent heat flooding through Nora's system anyway, made the pendant at her throat burn warm, made every nerve ending sing with rightness. This was what she had been missing her entire life. Not just connection, but chosen connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael's smile was the first genuine one she had seen from him. Tomorrow night, he said, I have allies arriving. Wolves I trust. We will complete the bond, cure the curse, and prepare for war. But tonight I need you to stay safe. Can you do that for me? On one condition, you stop treating this bond like a burden. We are partners, Kael, equals, or this does not work. A sound escaped him that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Equals. I can work with that. He kissed her again, harder this time, claiming and being claimed in equal measure. And somewhere in the forest beyond the pack boundaries, Shadow raised his massive head and howled. A sound that carried ancient approval that resonated with power older than pack law or council corruption. The primordials recognized what was forming here, a bond that could change everything. Inside the pack house, Aldrich Thornfield stood at a window overlooking the back courtyard. He watched the Alpha King kiss the white-haired Omega with an expression that mixed calculation and cold satisfaction. Interesting, he murmured to Dr. Graves, who had joined him. Very interesting indeed. Shall I prepare the contingency protocols, counselor? Yes, and contact our forces in the Eastern Territories. I want them ready to move within 48 hours. Aldrich's smile was reptilian. The king thinks he is being clever, romancing the little anomaly in secret, but he has just confirmed everything I suspected. You believe she is a whisperer, one of the bloodline we eliminated. I believe she is the daughter of Lyra and Theron, the child who escaped us 23 years ago, which makes her exponentially more dangerous than her parents were. 2 whisperer bloodlines combined. Then we eliminate her, tonight, before she can fully manifest. No. Aldrich's tone was sharp. We let her manifest. We let her cure the king's curse and reveal herself completely. And then we use her as justification to purge every wolf in the northern territories who might carry dormant whisperer genetics. We turn her from a threat into a tool, a dangerous game counselor. Perhaps, but I have been playing this game for 30 years, Doctor, and I have never lost. He walked away already planning, already 3 steps ahead. In the courtyard below, Nora shivered despite Cale's warmth. She pulled back from the kiss and looked up at the pack house at the windows blazing with light. And for just a moment, she could have sworn she saw a figure watching them, a distinguished older man with a smile that promised death. Cale, she whispered, I think we just ran out of time. He followed her gaze, saw what she saw, and his expression hardened. Then we move tonight, he said. I call my allies now, and we prepare for war. War. The word should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. War, Cale confirmed. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. Stay close to me. Do not leave my sight. And Nora, yes. When this is over, when we have destroyed the council and rebuilt everything they corrupted, I am going to court you properly. Flowers and moonlight and all the romance you should have had from the beginning. Despite everything, Nora laughed. I am going to hold you to that, Your Majesty. I am counting on it. He squeezed her hand once, then led her back toward the pack house, toward the council who wanted her dead, toward a confrontation that had been building for 3 generations, toward a future that was anything but certain, but was finally hers to claim. The white-haired Omega and the cursed king walking into fire together, and the primordials in the forest gathering their forces, preparing to honor their promise. The last whisperer would not fight alone, and the Council of 6 was about to learn exactly why their ancestors had been so desperate to eliminate her bloodline. Some powers were too dangerous to be controlled. Some bonds were too strong to be broken. And some wolves, once awakened, refused to ever be caged again. Nora woke to urgent knocking on her cabin door. She had barely slept, her mind racing with everything that was coming. The bond hummed in her chest, pulling toward Cale even now. Nora, open up, Maeve's voice. Panicked. Nora threw the door open to find her aunt's face ashen. The council. They are mobilizing forces. I heard the warriors talking. They are planning something for tonight. Tonight. The words settled like lead in Nora's stomach. Cale said his allies arrived tonight. We were going to complete the bond, cure the curse. The council will not give you that chance. Maeve gripped her arms. You need to decide, Nora, right now. Do you run or do you fight? Nora looked past Maeve toward the pack house, toward where she could feel Cale like a beacon. 30 days until the full moon. 30 days before the curse consumed him completely. And the council moving tonight. She thought about her parents who had died protecting her. About Shadow, who had pledged the primordials protection. About Cale, who had been fighting alone for 10 years. About the girl she had been yesterday, invisible and afraid. And the woman she was becoming. I fight, Nora said. I am done running. She fastened the pendant around her neck. Her father's pendant made from meteoric silver. She tucked the vial of primordial blood into her pocket. And she picked up the journal, her father's training manual. Then I am with you, Maeve said fiercely. Whatever comes, you do not face it alone. Together they walked toward the pack house as the sun climbed higher. Toward war, toward destiny, toward a future that would be written in blood and bond and ancient power. The white-haired Omega was done hiding, and the world was about to change. The council struck at sunset. Nora was in Cale's chambers when the alarm sounded. They had been preparing, reviewing maps, waiting for his allies. But the council had moved first. They are here. Cale moved to the window, his body tense. 200 warriors, council forces. 200, Nora's heart hammered. Cale, we are not ready. We never would have been ready. He turned to her, silver eyes blazing. But we have something they do not expect. What? You? The door burst open. Beta Finn Cale, second in command, stood breathless. Your Majesty, Councillor Thornfield demands you surrender the Omega. He has authorization from the Council to execute her as a threat to pack stability. Tell Aldrich he can go to hell. Finn's eyes widened, then he grinned fiercely. With pleasure, Your Majesty. Cale turned back to Nora. This is it. Are you ready? Nora thought about 23 years of being small, of being afraid, of hiding what she was. She pulled the vial of primordial blood from her pocket. What are you doing? Cale demanded. What I should have done from the beginning. She uncorked the vial. Becoming what I was meant to be. Nora, wait, she drank. The world exploded into sensation. Her vision fractured, multiplied. She could see through 1,000 eyes every wolf in the territory, wild and shifter alike, could feel their hearts beating as if they were her own. And deeper, older, she felt Shadow. Felt the ancient primordial's consciousness merge with hers. Little sister, his voice resonated through her entire being. You called, we answer. Her eyes snapped open and they were glowing gold. Kale stared at her, awe and fear warring on his face. Nora, I am still here. But her voice carried an echo, something ancient and vast. But I am also more. She moved to the window and raised her hand. Spoke not with words, but with the language of wolves, the language of the primordials. Come. From the forest, Shadow emerged. Behind him, Silver and Ember. Behind them, hundreds of wild wolves. They poured from the tree line like a living flood surrounding the council's forces. And then Nora spoke again, this time to the shifter wolves who stood with the council. Found the spark of consciousness in each, the part of them that remembered what it meant to be wolf, not weapon. Remember, she commanded. Remember who you are. 50 of the council's warriors stumbled, their eyes clearing. They looked around as if waking from a dream, then turned their weapons on their own commanders. Aldrich's voice roared across the courtyard. Kill her! Kill the Whisperer now! But it was too late. Nora descended the stairs with Kael at her side, Maeve following. The pendant at her throat blazed like a star, and when she stepped into the courtyard, the wild wolves parted like water. Shadow stood before her, and she placed her hand on his massive head. The merge deepened, and power flooded through her veins. Not just connection, unity. Counselor Thornfield, she called out, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. You have hunted my bloodline for 3 generations. You have murdered, enslaved, and corrupted in the name of control. Tonight that ends. Aldrich's face twisted with rage. You are nothing, a broken Omega playing with powers she does not understand. I understand perfectly. Nora stepped forward, and the wild wolves moved with her. I understand that you poisoned the Alpha King, that you have been creating pharaohs from stolen Omegas, that you have perverted everything wolves were meant to be. Lies. Are they? Kael's voice cut through the night. Show them, Nora. She closed her eyes and projected. Shared Shadow's memories with every wolf present, images of council enforcers setting traps, of Omegas being dragged away, of Dr. Graves' laboratory where living wolves screamed as they were transformed into pharaohs. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the council's own warriors looked sick. You have one chance, Kael said, his voice hard as iron. Surrender, face trial, or die here. For a moment, Aldrich looked like he might actually yield. Then his hand moved to his belt, pulling a weapon, a dark gun loaded with concentrated wolfsbane. He fired directly at Nora. Shadow moved faster than thought, taking the dart in his shoulder. The massive primordial stumbled, and Nora felt his pain like her own. No! She dropped to her knees beside him, hands glowing with golden light as she pulled the dart free. The wolfsbane was already spreading through his system, but she had primordial blood in her veins now. Had the power of the merge. She placed both hands on Shadow's chest and pushed. Not just healing energy, the bond. The same force that connected her to Kael she extended to Shadow. To all the primordials. To every wild wolf present. The great sundering had split wild from shifter. She was going to reverse it. Light exploded from her hands, spreading outward in waves. It washed over Shadow, purging the poison. It washed over the wild wolves, strengthening them. And it washed over the shifters, touching something deep in their souls they had forgotten existed. Unity, connection, wholeness. When the light faded, Aldrich was on his knees, his weapon fallen from nerveless fingers. The other council members stood, frozen, their power base crumbling, as they realized what had just happened. Nora had not just healed Shadow. She had proven what Whisperers could do, what they had always been meant to do. Bridge the divide. Unite what had been broken. It is over, she said quietly. And it was. Kael's allies arrived an hour later to find the council already in chains. By dawn, news had spread across all territories. The Whisperer had returned. The council had fallen. And the Alpha King had a mate who could command wild and shifter alike. 6 months later, the sacred grove had never seen so many wolves gathered in peace. Nora stood at the center, hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly, where new life grew, a child who would carry both Whisperer and King bloodlines, the first of a new generation. Kael stood beside her, no trace of the curse remaining in his silver eyes, only pride and love. Around them, representatives from all 7 territories watched as the new council took their oaths. Not Council of 6, but Council of 12, with equal representation from wild and shifter alike. Elder Astrid administered the vows. Shadow sat at Nora's other side, a living symbol of the bridge she had built. In the front row, Maeve wore the silver pendant of a royal advisor, tears streaming down her face. Beside her, the former council warriors, who had turned 50 wolves who now served as peacekeepers, ensuring the old corruption could never return. Aldrich Thornfield had been executed 3 months prior, his final words unrepentant. Dr. Graves labored in the mines he had once exploited, his knowledge of feral creation destroyed. Vivian lived in exile, her testimony having saved her life, if not her reputation. Their seized assets, 95 million in stolen wealth, had been redistributed. Omega shelters, primordial sanctuaries, healing centers. The reforms were real, tangible. No Omega wore chains anymore. Wild wolves moved freely through packed territories no longer hunted. And in the mountains and forests and places humans rarely went, primordials emerged from hiding. 20 had revealed themselves so far, with more coming each week. Ready, Kale whispered, his hand covering hers on her stomach. Nora looked out at the assembled wolves, Wild and Shifter, Alpha and Omega, all watching her with respect instead of contempt, and smiled. I was born ready, she said. I just didn't know it yet. Together they walked forward to address their people. Not subjects, partners, the white-haired queen and her king, and the world they had remade together.